Let's talk about an infinite mindset versus a finite mindset. Hey everybody, it is Coach Eric here for this week's 5 Fantastic Minutes. I'm going to take a page out of Brian Wright's playbook here, as he so often talks about an infinite mindset. And so what I'm talking about here is when unique situations happen, a circumstance, something presents itself to you, to your practice, and to your team. How do you handle it in a way that takes an infinite approach? Right? And too often I think that we in our business as leaders or as employees is we take the easy way. We take the way that seems the most obvious. It seems the most protective of our own interests. But too often that choice creates a finite approach in the relationship you have with your patient. Rather, what could it have looked like if you'd have thought outside of the box, if you'd been willing to give more to the situation that might have impacted your business in extreme ways, in very positive ways, not just today, not just in the short sight, but in the long-sighted approach. And I want to give you an example of what I'm talking about here from a personal experience I had recently. So as many of you may know, as a little side business, I've had some rental properties over the past 13 or 14 years. But this past year, I was working at selling off a significant part of my rental business, and I was going to be reinvesting the proceeds, the revenue, into new properties, right? So kind of doing a rollover, a tax-protected rollover program. And as I've been working with my agent, good friend, somebody I really trust, he was guiding me through this rollover process, right? But in hindsight, we come to find on one of my sales that the dates that he had been guiding me with were inaccurate. And we didn't discover it until the window of rolling over the property had already expired, meaning that I could not get the tax benefit within that window of time. Going to cost me come next tax season, it's going to cost me probably $15,000 or $20,000 towards my taxes, right? Long story short, I called him up and I'm just like, hey, I need to chat with you. I'm a little unsure what I'm looking at or hearing here. And he said, hold on, Eric, let me do a little research. And he spent about a half an hour to an hour digging in, doing a little more research. And he immediately called me back then and said, all right, let me get this right out of the way. Non-negotiable, I am going to absorb that tax loss for you. Right? Here's the rules. Here's what it is. I made a mistake. I gave you bad guidance, and it is non-negotiable. I will not allow you to say no to me. I am going to absorb that tax burden on your behalf next year. And now we'll see what we actually do with that. But the fact is, he took a very infinite approach to our relationship. Right? In that moment, the more natural thing to do would have been to protect someone's personal interest, try to find a way out of it, or just say they're sorry, but ultimately move on while the other person has to kind of suffer the consequences of it. And I think that's what most of the time we, or you maybe as a business owner and team, you might take that more short-sighted approach, protecting your own self-interest. But instead, he took a much longer-sighted approach. And what was the long-term approach he was looking at? It was like deeper partnerships with me, more business opportunity with me down the road, more opportunity for me to say to my friends, my business acquaintances, people that I talk with about how genuine this guy is, how much he cares, how much he's willing to do it right and get it right, even if he makes a mistake like in this case, right? That's a much more long-sighted approach, even while he's going to have to absorb a pretty big concern to his pocketbook when that comes around. Right? And I just thought it was remarkable because it took me from someplace where I was a little on edge about that relationship just for that fleeting moment, and he totally turned me into a bigger, deeper fan of doing more business with him and advocating on his behalf. And that's the challenge. Taking an infinite approach often means you're going to have to take one on the chin, or you're going to have to do something that doesn't naturally feel best for you in the moment, but you're doing it because of the long-term benefits of how it's going to impact you, your business, and your relationship with your patients. So here's your action item as we wrap up this thought for today. I want you to think back to something relatively recent where you were presented with a tough situation, a relational situation, something where you had to make a tough decision. And I want you to chat as a group. What decision did you make? And could it have been a more infinite decision? And if so, what might that have looked like? And the bigger suggestion or the bigger action item is think this way in the future. As you get more circumstances like this that may land in your lap, how can you approach it with an infinite perspective rather than the normal and natural finite perspective? Thanks everybody for listening. We'll look forward to catching up next time.